Africa does not have direction. In a number of occasions, African presidents have lamented, how can we solve Africa's problem when we don't have even our own money? I support fully His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, President William Samoei Ruto, when he said, you can't say Africa solutions with Africa solutions as Africans when we are begging the same people to solve the situation on our continent. Time has come for us to stand up and ask for our own and be reliant, self-reliant. Are we self-reliant? We are not broke, but broken. Across the continent of Africa, we have littered pitfalls of insanity. On every country, everywhere, potholes, yet there is money pumped for budgets. You find deep potholes deeper than the craters on our mountains. In Nigeria, for example, if you go for Christmas, you must start 1 month in advance because you might not eat Christmas with your family, especially in the southeast. If you are flying to Lagos and you are going to Enugu, you might not reach. You might reach when Christmas has passed, and those who came to London have returned. I went with a friend, and he did not eat his Christmas with his family. I called him. I said, I'm already in London. He said, we haven't arrived because of the poor roads. Surely, after 66 years of independence in Africa, we still cry of poor roads, and yet we pump each and every year money of that nature. So, ladies and gentlemen, today's topic touches us. Why is Africa always at crossroads? Why do they catch us? Why are we caught up in a mess of ICC with Putin, President Putin, coming to Africa to visit South Africa? And we have a problem. A warrant of arrest was designed to stop BRICS. For example, those who don't know what BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. BRICS is attracting so many members of the world, many nations, even traditional friends of the United States of America. BRICS wants to establish an alternative currency, an alternative means of payments, an alternative means of doing business. So we have a problem. We are caught up in catch-22 here. And I'm telling you, we have a problem here as Africans. Unless we wake up, open up our eyes, stand non-aligned, we have a problem. And that problem could come on us. It could come and destroy our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, is President Putin allowed to visit Africa despite warrant of arrest issued by the ICC? The current situation is that the ICC, Russia has also issued a warrant of arrest for the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, my friend Karim Khan. Most of you who have followed the ICC cases, you'll know that Matanga, Karim Khan, and others were on the side that used to oppose ICC. But Mr. Karim Khan saw an opportunity to go and work and get more money, and decided to join ICC as the chief prosecutor. We left him to go and do so. Some of us supported. When we saw a flawed process, I stood firm and I wrote a letter. You can check for that letter on the ICC, on the website, my website. And you will find that I stood firm and wrote, why is it that the ICC recruitment is taking place, and it seems that they want to lock out some people and bring prosecutors who are not very good. Karim today is the chief prosecutor of International Criminal Court, but I think there is something wrong that has happened to a great guy called Karim Khan. Someone has pushed him into a pit hole of insanity. You can't issue a warrant without following the procedure. There is quite a lot of difficulties. We do understand the dying of people in Ukraine and Russia. The war is not necessary. But when a warrant of arrest is issued politically motivated, it adds more injury to the same plight that we have today. I therefore submit that the warrant that was issued to Russia was against articles of the Rome Statute, because Russia is a non-state party of the International Criminal Court. I also submit that it was politically motivated to stop BRICS conference from taking place. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are on this platform, I want us to begin to find out, why is Africa caught up in a mess, in a web of this type of nature? Why are we caught up in this mess? Why have we fallen victims all the time? Something has to happen. A conference that has been arranged by South Africa. As we speak now, over 96 countries are willing to join BRICS, including Saudi Arabia. Negotiations quietly, silently, they are willing to join. And this, of course, will affect the dollar, the economy, the life that we have on the planet Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, I therefore open this space for discussion, and it can be led by Delon Africa. I don't know where Songa, you are not being accepted. I don't know why. I've sent you the mic several times. But let me begin with Delon Africa, and let her make her submissions as you choose fastest, and you choose other people. I can see Mr. Constitution from South Africa, of course, a member of the NGOs, who will, of course, speak and say he will arrest, or he will arrest Mr. Putin. I have seen Malema putting up a stand that they will escort Mr. Putin from his plane up to the conference and return him to his plane. So I don't know, Mr. Constitutional Affairs, whether today you are coming up here to speak to us, whether you are bigger than Malema or you are equal with Malema. You'll tell us more here. This is a free discussion. Don't insult people. Don't bring in a topic that is not here. Let's talk about what is here. Thank you very much. My co-host, take the mic.
Thank you, Dr. David Matanga. Good evening, everybody, all of you, some familiar faces and some of you who are new. Thank you for joining this space. Just a fair, Dr. David, I think you're not muted. Thank you. For some of you that are new to this space, we'd like to adhere to a few regulations, that we all just be mindful that we all come from different backgrounds and different environments, and it's important that we respect one another's opinions. This is not a war zone. We are not here to fight with one another. We all have a common goal to be solution focused for the betterment of Africa. The topic of discussion tonight is whether President Putin is allowed to visit Africa despite the warrant of arrest. Now, as you all know, myself, for those of you that are new, I'm from South Africa. I reside in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm a proud African patriot. So I do speak on behalf of the whole of Africa, despite being from South Africa. I will start off by stating that South Africa's reaction to the ICC warrant for Vladimir Putin. South Africa's foreign minister criticized the International Criminal Court for not having an even-handed approach to all leaders responsible of violations of international law. Now, many of us would ask why that response to it. But if you look at history, South Africa and Russia's relations dates way back to 1896, where Russia has contributed their support to South Africa during the Boer War. That was one of the first biggest wars that took place within South Africa. Now, that dates back quite a long time to where we are currently at in 2022. And the question is, will South Africa arrest Putin or not? Now, if we look at the history and the relationship between South Africa and Russia and the bilateral relations that have been strengthened along the years, it is quite evident that South Africa will not arrest Putin, as they did not arrest the as South Africa also failed to arrest Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir in June. So I will leave you guys to that, and we'll open the floor for some debates, opinions. There's no wrong or right. We're open to hear from each and every one of you. Faust, did you state your opinion earlier on, or was that just you attempting to assist us?
Yeah, no. Can you hear me okay? Can everyone else hear me okay? Thumbs up is good.
Yes,
Whatever.
we can
Awesome.
hear you very well. It's great to see you, by the way. Would you like to reintroduce yourself and maybe just explain to the new listeners where you are from? And then you can start.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. So I have joined Mr. Dr. Matanga way before I think 2012. So I've been there. I've watched him just kind of grow and just back in Kenya. I am Kenyan, but I live in Texas. I do go by Faust 72. I have just been following and seeing him just joining, and I've been just intrigued. So to see this coming back and asking the right questions over the last 1 year or 1 and 2 years is amazing. And I won't go too much into that because I really can go deep dive, and I have followed the whole Huru and Ruto thing and going to ICC. So I followed all of that. So I really, really want to give a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Matsanga because I have seen it, and I am excited that I can come up here and you have given that opportunity to give me to kind of give an opinion. So moving on to this topic, and I wouldn't go too long into it. I come from an international relations background, so much so that I have worked abroad. As I said, I am Kenyan, so I have really traveled extensively, and I work even today in not just not international relations specifically, but more in also technology. So for me, I am going to pivot what I'm about to post or pivot beyond the political realm. Because what I'm about to say, I think, is going to eventually lead to that. So going back to the topic, is President Putin allowed to visit Africa despite warrant of arrest? I believe that is okay. Depending on the signatories, we have, international law. We have the the international law. Man, it's been a while since I've been in school, so excuse me when I try to. I will not have the technical terms, but each country certainly has its own kind of duality with whomever they sign with. So the U.S. is not a signatory of ICC, much like I think South Africa just recently before Putin. Was going well, if he was going to go to South Africa, they pulled out of the ICC very quietly. So there are things that happen in international law that countries certainly have the obligation to be signatories. There are laws that give them the opportunity to pull out, right? Once they're signatories, they have that capability to do that. So that's one thing I want to mention there. And secondly, I want to maybe focus, if we can, as we move forward. So when we're talking about Russia, maybe we should think of before Russia became Russia as opposed to vis-a-vis Soviet Union. So when we talk about Soviet Union and African relations, back when African Union and even the predecessor of African Union as we know today, how were like Soviet Union relationships between the African delegations at the time before even countries got their independence. How was that working? Because those relationships have certainly even been there before the last I guess what we're focusing now is very recent memoria, but in the last 50 years, how has Russia or Soviet Union, excuse me, before the breakup in 1990s, how were their relationships working then? And we have Angola, we have Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, Guinea, Morocco, South Africa, and then now as well. And this is going to be again too broad, but how are we working today? We have the political realm, we have the scientific realm, we have the technology realm, and I feel that that is what is pulling us away from what we have been used to, from the colonial aspect. And that to me is more of a niche way of focusing. So when we're talking about satellites, when we're talking about Namibia, for example, having North Korea come in and working that bilateral relationship. So I'm more focused in that type of relationship, if we can move beyond that. But certainly we, of course, have to examine the past. But I think this topic is so broad that we can't just focus on today and the last few weeks or the past year. We have to look and examine previously, before before Russia became what it is today, and how they worked as Soviet Union with African countries, and what they're trying to achieve today, and then what is going to be coming next up front, despite the war that's going on anyways. So it might be too broad, but I'm sorry, that's just how I am and how I think. But I will yield my mic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I do agree with you. I think one thing that we have to take into consideration is the loyalty amongst these African countries towards Russia. And I think loyalty plays a big role, and it's quite ironic that it has to be South Africa that had to issue the warrant of arrest towards Russia, especially considering the fact that during the presidency of Jacob Zuma, Russian and South African ties warmed significantly as the Putin administration sought to move a strategic country away from the West and obviously gain a foothold in Africa. So, for its part, South Africa sought to distance itself from Western actions in Libya, which was the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. So, there's a lot of there's a lot of factors that plays a role where you can sort of see how South Africa already started not building or strengthening their bilateral relations, but also obviously building that loyalty. Oyete, am I pronouncing it right, Emmanuel?
Yes, my name.
Hi, how are you? Please introduce yourself. Where are you from? It's great to see you and have you here.
Yes, I am from Uganda, and this is a very interesting topic because I remember one time we had President Bashir was also invited by President Museveni to visit, and at that point also there was an arrest warrant pending on him, and we didn't hand it over. And American diplomats, I remember them protesting and walking away from Kampala here. And for me, that speaks of the weakness of the Africa that we have now, because Africa should have been the third force, which would actually act as a balance of power between these countries. Because if you remember in our history, as the Cold War was playing around between the East and the Western countries in Europe, Africa was like a battleground. The assassination of cliques and major wars, most of their wars were fought here. But surprisingly, Russia and America did not fight between themselves. There was no bullet, I think, that crossed between Kremlin or Moscow and New York. But the bullets were raining in Africa. Their differences were being sorted in Africa. Africa was just like an arena where they would sort their differences. And for me, I see that history is repeating itself. And this time it is playing within South Africa and tough. And also Bashir was there. And I remember South Africa also didn't yield to that. And for me, that is a true test, because at the end of the day, Africa will be threatened by sanctions because we are poor, we are beggars. So we can't really come and put a very strong stand and say why are we doing this? And I think that's a wake-up call that we should rise and tilt the balance of power also sometimes in our favor. Because now Russia is helping Africa, even Britain, even the West is helping Africa. So Africa is torn is like a girl being dated by two boys, by two men of different qualities. Perhaps one is rich, another one is good in the bed, and then you must play both. Africa is forced to be like that lady. We should play both of these men for their advantage. And for me, that is a very huge dilemma as a young man who is coming up in this kind of polarized world. I think the only time we tried to rest was when Russia collapsed and we were under unipolar world. But now that Russia is back and China is back and BRICS is coming up to counter, and Africa should brace itself again to be another ground where there's power struggle. We are seeing it in Congo now. There's that power struggle. And I remember, really, this thing has taken a toll in Africa. I remember these guys they sustained some of our worst dictators in our history because of their division. So for me, I am not looking at whether Putin will be arrested or not, because if really these people were serious on arresting Putin, they would even pick him from his country. See, when they came for Gaddafi, he was bombed from his home. And they bombed him because he didn't have capacity to counter. But now Putin, they know he's a strong man, they can't get him. But at the end of the day, it is South Africa that will be punished. South Africa will be punished, because why did they threaten to arrest him when he visited China? Because I understand Putin is visiting China and the rest, but such arrest warrant is not really, they don't threaten. But when he's visiting a weak country like Africa, that's when we get a tall order. How do you even act? These are all big boys. I wish they can play this in their continent, in their turf, the other side, and leave us as a third world or as Africa to sort out our problems. After all, we are all coming from the mess created by them. This colonization was actually initiated by them, and we are recovering at just our 60 years with all our differences, and they still keep on adding their weight on us. For me, I think as African, we need to create that kind of solidarity as ourselves. We need to be very humble. Only that sometimes our leadership also is not helpful to our situation, because the way we behave, we also behave like people who are not serious. We are this poor man who is also not really very frugal. not very frugal with his situation. And for me, that is now the weakest part because by now, as Dr. Matsanga was talking about, our roads are very bad.
Again, we
Everything
have
we
the same problem.
yeah, we
Delon, I have the same problem now.
Dr. Masanga, can you hear me?
I hear
Apologies,
you
Oyite.
now.
We can
Oite,
hear you,
Oite, are
Dr.
you still
David.
on?
He is still on. He just
yes,
muted to hear you out.
Eh?
yes, I'm on. I'm on, Dr. Matsanga. Can you hear me from London, sir?
Dr. David, is your internet okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've just arrived. You know, I was flying. I landed and I've just arrived. Now my internet is going to be stable in the next few minutes.
Okay,
But you
then,
can go
Dr.
ahead. I
David.
have heard everything that 72 has said, my good friend, number 14. And I have heard a few of what Oite was talking about. I will come in response later. I want as many people to discuss this topic as possible. Then I'll come in to give you my professional advice that I know more about ICC, the warrant of arrest, how it is issued, how it is begun, how you go to request for investigations in any country which is outside the ICC mandate. I think the chief prosecutor erred on this one, and I'm telling you, many people will question this warrant, and I'm not the only one, but that is it. Who was on the line by now?
It
I
was
am on.
Oyete. He was still, yes, he is
Oite, you
still
can go ahead.
explaining.
So for me, I think as I conclude that whether Putin is going to be arrested here in Africa or not, first of all, one thing that we should realize is that
I'm
ICC.
completely not hearing Oite.
Can the rest hear me very well?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. So yes. For me, as I was concluding, I was saying
You
that
hear him.
for me, ICC is just the highest stage of politics at an international level because when you look at these big
Didn't you
boys
come
in the
down first and then come back?
Sure, Dr.
who
David, I'll do so.
I think it is. There's some connection between you and me, which is, yeah.
so can I proceed? Can I proceed now?
Maybe let me do this, or can you hear me, Dr. Matsang?
Yeah, we can hear
It's
you.
only radio page. I think the problem again is back to Dr. Matsang is having the original problem he had when he joined the space. Unfortunately, he can't drop and become a list.
That's okay.
The space will collapse.
Yeah, that's okay. Oyite, please finish, and we can. I'll try my best to continue on with anyone else who raises their hand when I see on my phone. But finish, Oyite, please.
Okay, for me, as I finished, for me, I was just trying to talk about the ICC being an international level. It's just politics, is not about the justice system. Because if it was really justice system where everyone was accountable to it, even these big boys would be members.
I
But
think
look
it
at the
is
USA.
Oite's network. You are being monitored by your group back in Uganda, Mr. Oite.
No, please, we are.
I can't hear you at all.
I am very okay with the system here. The system in Uganda is very friendly. I don't know whether my friend the punchline is hearing me or first 72. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can
Mr.
hear you.
Oite,
Okay. Yeah.
So it is David
all
Masanga
right.
who is having the problem
Oite,
with the
drop,
10th
then
Downing
come back.
Street. No,
Please.
Matsanga, it is you with the problem with the
Yeah.
10th
My
Downing
son,
Street, sir.
Oite, drop, then come back.
Dr. David, I think it's
Yes.
your connection that's the issue because everyone can hear one another, but it's just you that's experiencing difficulties with the internet connection. But I think it's probably because you're traveling.
Okay. Thank you. I hear you. radio punchline. Do you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear, loud and clear. Because we can even hear.
Oite, you see now, Oite, do you hear me clearly?
I can hear you, Matsanga, but 10th Downing Street is punishing you.
This is Oite's network.
Oite was actually about to finish, Dr. Matsanga. He's just wrapping up.
Okay, Oite finish. You know, Oite's network is too close to the powers being in that country. All your phones are tapped, so you can see the problem. It's not from my side. I'm in an institution which has the best network on planet Earth right now.
You actually in an institution. Masanga, you are part of the institution that suppressed Africa for a very long time, and you cannot tell me that.
Interpret for me what he said.
Yes, so as I was just concluding, first of all, you are staying in one of the worst countries that really disorganized Africa for a very long time. And then, as I'm talking about that country, it's also not a member of ICC, but it keeps on poking its nose on the justice system in the world. And yet, if we are to be equal, let us play it in the equal turf. Let everyone be a member and subjected to the rules. But why do they want to enforce that rule on other people and they become the exception to the general rule? So for me, as Africa, I think we need to start calling these people into order that they are not standing in that high moral ground. They shouldn't lecture us. South Africa should go ahead and host Putin. And I am very sure that Putin will go back to his country. Let them pick Putin from Moscow if really they are serious and they know what they want. Thank you very much. I yield my mind.
Thank you, Oyete.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
There are so many points that I agree with you. If they want
just
to
wanted
continue
to say hi.
the fight, it could be...
following. I'm also in Uganda.
Sorry, guys. Maybe please respect the space and wait your turn. Yellow Brigade, I'll give you time to speak. Because before you, there was someone else that was meant to speak, which is Constitution first. Constitution, are you ready to go?
Yes, my sister. Good afternoon. I'm not sure whether Dr. Matsanga can hear me, and I'm in South Africa, so he can't say I'm closer to people who tap phones, and okay, he can hear me. I see the big 100 up. Thanks again for hosting this space. The question is broadly talking about Africa as a whole. If you look, you go to Google, or those who have the Roman statute, just go to Google and check the map of African states which have rectified their laws into the Roman statute. You will see that the map is largely green. So the majority of African states, in terms of the land mass and also in terms of the numbers, are affiliating themselves to the Roman statute, more especially the bottom part of the sub-Saharan Africa. It's only few countries in the east which, and then few in the north which have not, which have disassociated themselves with the ICC. Now, then the question will depend. This question, even if you say, is President Putin allowed to visit Africa? It depends. So if he goes to a country up north, he may visit there as he has done to China, and he can also do the same in the East Africa. He can visit some of those nations. However, down south, he cannot just visit. He cannot just visit. There will be a lot of diplomatic talks between the nations on how that nation will not try to sabotage his presence or his stay in that particular country. For an example, in South Africa, it is not straight cut. It's not like when he goes to Beijing. So when he comes here, South Africans have to apply their own laws in respect of whatever it is in place against Vladimir Putin. So there is initially, I think there was a space which was hosted by Dr. Matsanga. He still questions the way the warrant was issued and just the procedure around it. I agree. If it was faulty, if the process was not strict up to the required standards and laws or procedures, there is a room for Russians to argue around it. It is not the business of South Africa to fight the battle of the person who has been indicted by the ICC. So if the process was not properly followed, the Russians must take it up to the Hague, must take it up to the UN. They must fight that battle. South Africa must not enter that debate. That's the first thing. So if he comes to South Africa, it's not guaranteed, just to answer this question, it's not guaranteed that he would just come here and not be arrested.
So in short, you are saying if he comes to South Africa, you will arrest him?
Allow me, Dr. Matsanga, to formulate my point. Then I will answer your question.
You time, but you give us good saliva by answering that first. Will you arrest him?
Yeah, but you always don't allow me to.
Do you really have a jail in South Africa where you can put even on Robben Island? If that island will not be bombed?
But okay, maybe then, Dr. Matsang, what we perhaps is the topic. If the topic, your topic is slightly different. You are saying, is he allowed to visit the country? So I'm trying to respond to the question.
No,
then I
am spicing your talk.
Oh, okay.
The topic is okay.
Okay.
Before you proceed, out of 54 countries of Africa, 33 countries have signed the Roma Statute. Let's begin from there.
Yes. So the majority of the countries in Africa.
Yes, there is one country that I helped to get out of ICC, and that one country is Burundi. I made an application when the late President Nkurunziza was alive. We quit ICC. We are no longer members of the ICC from Burundi. But 33 countries in Africa out of 54 nations have the ICC ratified treaty among their books.
Yes.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay, thanks. So thanks, Dr. Matsanga. So you are partly answered. When it comes to the 34 countries, strictly speaking, he can visit those countries, but he risks being arrested. Strictly speaking, as to whether those countries have the capacity to arrest him and they will be scared of the nuclear nuke is something else. But strictly speaking, he cannot visit those countries. But there's something which I wanted to say, Dr. Matsanga. You are much more familiar with the Roman Statute than most of us sitting in this space. You have experience, you've been there, you've fought, you've done everything to make the statute to be fair to everyone. You always talk about this, you always tell us. But those who have not read it, I implore to everyone, just download it. Read Article 59. It talks about the arrest proceedings. So the arrest proceedings. There's just one part which I want to read there, which is very important. It says, it shall not be open to the competent authority of the custodian state to consider whether the warrant of arrest was properly issued in accordance with Article 58, 1, subsection A and B. So the argument that the warrant was issued improperly, it was defective, it is not up to the authority of that particular country which would be effecting the arrest to quibble about that. it is open to the person who's being arrested to go and challenge it. But it's not up to South Africa to say, no, we are not going to arrest Putin because we believe the warrant was issued in a defective manner. They should not do so. So that's what the Roman statute says. And South Africa has to implement it. Lastly, Dr. Matsanga and everyone in the space, it's a pity that most citizens of the world are fighting the battles of the politicians. The Roman statute in general does not target citizens of the country. Very rare you will see ordinary citizens being arrested through a Roman statute. It's mainly politicians which are abusing the citizens of a particular country or the neighboring country. And they are listed by Article 5, 6, and 7. They list the wars which automatically attract the Roman statute. And it's not ordinary people who are affected by this thing. We just become collateral. Otherwise, this thing of citizens fighting battles of politicians, the very politicians who are, the Roman statute exists to protect citizens of the world against abusers of power. And abusers of power is military generals, is political leaders in the main. And they attack innocent souls. And those innocent souls, if we think that South Africa or Uganda or anyone else, the state will protect them, will protect the citizens against the leader, the political leader, it is impossible. Law enforcement agents tend to lean with towards the side of the political leader in the advancement of the abuse. The only way to protect citizens is to have courts like these ones. We can always quibble as to whether they are even-handed or not, but this thing of dismissing the ICC completely as if it is useless or there is an alternative a remedy to protect citizens of that nations, of those particular nations, because this one of Africa is useless. This African court is completely useless, and the only way people will get justice and it is through international courts, not this African one where it's buddy, AU, people protect each other, and whilst people are dying in the process. I'm saying perhaps we have to also think about the principle of having this court as to whether it is applied evenly is another debate, but we cannot dismiss the importance of having this court in protection of citizens, and citizens must not fall into a trap of fighting battles of the politicians and say let's go do away with ICC. And it's many politicians who say get out of the ICC because you will be abused. The citizens will never be abused. It was those politicians and military generals and law enforcement agents and in business people who are funding such a cruelty against humanity or cruelty against citizens, who are usually attracted to, who are mainly attracted or who could easily be implicated in the process of the arrest and the extent to which the statute can apply it to a particular nation or to this nation. So that is my view. So Vladimir Putin has no business in coming. He must not make the lives of Africans difficult by coming to their particular nations, because they will now be forced to do something which sometimes they don't even have a capacity to do it, but they have to do something, failing which then they also risk being sanctioned, and they will find themselves suffering because of his own selfishness wherever he comes from, because he didn't commit these crimes in Africa, but he will end up living as much more poorer in his presence. This BRICS summit has to be done virtually, and it must be a hybrid approach. Brazilians and others can come, but him with his criminal thing, dark cloud hanging over him, he has to stay in his country, fight this thing there, and not come and make the lives of Africans extremely difficult for his own doings. I think that's the unfairness about it. It's a pity that we're also falling into a trap of defending him, whereas we have no business in so doing, because on his own volition, he decided to do what he did, and he has to sort it out himself without trying to drag poor African nations into his own battles with the West. Thanks, co-host and as well, Dr. Matsanga.
Okay. Thank you, constitutional speaker.
Faust,
Dr. David.
sorry.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, go
so
ahead.
sorry, Faust. Yeah, before you go ahead, I think after Constitution, it was Yellow Brigade Task Force. Are you still with us? Yellow Brigade?
Yes,
Mr.
I'm
Yellow
still
Brigade,
around.
Mr. Yellow Brigade from Uganda, please. Now, thank you.
Yes,
Go
I'm
ahead.
still around.
Please go
Good
ahead,
evening
Yellow
once
ahead.
more.
Brigade.
Good evening once more. Well, I don't have much to say, but the little I can say is we have seen really the people who are saying that Putin must be arrested. They have issued the warrant of arrest. Those people, they have committed actually worse crimes elsewhere more than what Putin has done. And according to what I've seen, I've read here, they have issued a warrant of arrest for Putin because of unlawful deportation. They have not mentioned many crimes that he has committed, like the crimes those other people have committed in other countries. So why is it that the warrant of arrest has never been issued on those
I'm
people
not
who
hearing
committed crimes?
Yellow Brigade.
We
Dr.
can hear
Masang,
you,
I'm
Dr.
sorry.
David. Yes, we can hear him. Can you hear me, Dr. David?
Dr. David is kind of, I think there is a bit of bias. He thinks that people who are speaking from Uganda, they are kind of near so and so, and they are tapped. So he kind of, I think, tries to pretend that he's not hearing, but he's hearing, I know.
I don't think so. I think his network is really distorted as he has been traveling. But
But
if you guys can,
the network only gets distorted when Ugandan is on the mic.
I don't think Dr. David is biased. He is Ugandan. Dr.
All
David,
right,
can you
thank
hear
you.
us? Dr. David, see, I don't think he can hear me either. Yellow Brigade, would you like to just continue your point and then you can yield and then we'll have another speaker? Dr. David? Okay,
Dr.
guys,
David,
I think he really has network issues. Yellow Brigade, I think you can go ahead and just finish your. I think it's